Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Batcast, an OSU talk show. Today is Sunday, February 2nd of 2025, and this is our first 2025 episode. We had a long hiatus, or not really a long hiatus compared to the first one, but a little bit of a break for the holidays and stuff. But anyway, if this is your first time being on the Vatcast, this is a live talk show primarily focused on OSU music and Vocaloid. So we have our special guest here today, Mo. You can say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll be discussing a bit of his OSU background, role as a staff member, and other things. Before we get too much further, this show is hosted by the Vocaloid Appreciation Team. It's a community for Vocaloid appreciators. Although you don't have to be one to join or participate in anything we do. We do things like the Vocaloid mapping contest, watch parties for Vocaloid events. We do a weekly mapping zone where we peer pressure each other into mapping. And we do some other things. For example, in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a Among Us, event, if you will. So if you're interested in any of those, join the Discord. It's linked below. This show is designed to be mostly an audio experience, so nothing wrong with you just having it open in the background while you watch. And then, of course, the VOD will be available on YouTube. But the great thing about participating live is that if you do leave comments in the Twitch chat, we can shout them out on the show, answer them, those kinds of things, which is great. And then give us your feedback at the end. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, how has everyone's last two months gone?
Pretty good.
Yep. pretty much the same.
Yep.
Pretty eventful.
Very talkative, I see everyone.
I finished a huge project at work. I went on vacation and I said, okay guys, I'm gonna be gone for a week. You need to review this because we're supposed to release it in January. Nobody reviewed it. We're not releasing it in January.
Yeah, this is what happens when we are sleep deprived doing this.
Yeah, I just woke up, man. Like now you just asked me about the last 2 months. Like, shit.
Come on, man. We're practiced at this. We've done it. What? You've been here like 5 of them, so 4 or 6 of them maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little hard to talk about like what I've been busy with, but I've been busy. That's kind of it. It's like, the mix of the work and the life, the not OSU essentially. So.
The not OSU. I mean, what have you been doing in OSU these days?
Finishing my trying to rank my last 3 maps. Like they're all done. There's that. Also, I guess.
Wait, is the one with the storyboard done?
No, I'm still hounding my fellow storyboarder to get the last thing done since it's apparently like 90% complete. But
very nice.
Needs
a
little push.
When it's done, let me know so I can rejoin the BN to nominate it. And
yeah.
Immediately quit.
Yeah. I'm it imminent is what I've been told. So I'm working on that. I'm working on I'm working on like video series. So like I contracted someone to make some assets. So we'll be getting some of that in the next couple of months. But other than that, it's just groundwork. Nothing real yet. So
anything exciting going on for you, Mo?
Let's see. In terms of OSU, I've got a couple of GDs that guest difficulties I need to be working on. I also have a couple of maps that I need to work on myself. I haven't ran anything in like 2 years, I think. And there's a few projects I want to get done. I want to try and get done this year. I want to try and get back into mapping a little bit more. I've been kind of slacking a lot with my mapping. Do want to get back into it.
Have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
probably should have mentioned that I'm working on this the judging for a map pooling contest right now. So there's this public map pooling server called Pooling Core. So if anyone is in the tournament community and wants to join that, that's the link is somewhere probably on either. I think they were trying to get it on the wiki, but yeah, judging one of those, and we're gonna do a results stream later today. So
very cool.
yeah, still waking up, so it took a bit for me to get surface.
Even though you just talked about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, what happened to me? I drove from Massachusetts to Michigan for Christmas, and then I came back, and then I got COVID, which is the first time I've had it. I managed to dodge it this long, but I think everyone has to get it eventually. That's my new theory.
How bad did you get it?
It wasn't that bad. Like, kind of achy and stuff, like the first couple days, but really it was like a sinus thing for me that lasted for like a good 2 weeks, where I literally could not talk without coughing.
Oh
So I was just
no.
like basically mute for like two weeks. Um, and like after like probably like the first week or so, I was like, all right, when's this going away? So I went to the doctor. I was like, okay, what can we do to fix this? Like make this get better? Because my real life job is actually as a flight instructor, so I kind of need to be able to talk in order to, communicate with my students. Um, and they were like, "You have the vid," and I'm like, "Oh."
Oh.
That's not nice, no.
Oh.
No, that wasn't as fun. But yeah, it was pretty mild, other than the lack of being able to talk without coughing. Um, yeah. So yeah, that was my month, I suppose. I interviewed at another flight school. I'm hoping I'll get the job in a couple weeks. So yeah. How about you, Nafi?
It was my birthday last month, so my fiance actually took me to Disney World. But the winter storm had just hit, and we were like, oh, it's gonna be fine. We're gonna be in Florida. Everything is gonna be wonderful and 50 degrees, and the sun's gonna be out. It was raining.
Oh no.
It was raining every day.
Yeah, that's Florida.
Yeah.
Should have warned you. Oops.
And cold. It was like 30 degrees.
Oh,
Oh, that's unusual. That's very unusual. It's the climate change happening.
Sucked.
what's so crazy though is like Texas is colder than it is in Boston. Like,
What?
and they're also getting a lot more snow than we are. We actually have a very mild winter up here. So yeah, I find that very unusual when everyone else is like, "Oh my God, the snowstorms are crazy."
That is wild.
And we're just like, this is a really chill winter. It's snowed a couple times, but that's about it. And you know, like last week it was like 45 degrees here, which is like, I don't know, pretty warm for January in New England. But anyway, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday for last month.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thanks.
Better late than
First
never.
month.
Yeah, better late than ever.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
we had like New Year's, Lunar New Year's, but it's your birthday month, so
That's the most
Yeah.
important one, right?
close enough, right?
Oh yeah, we haven't
know-
done.
While we're at it, we might as well just give you a happy birthday for next year too.
What?
Oh yeah, front load.
Yeah, right.
I'd prefer not to work ahead on that one.
Alrighty. Well, anyway, I think that is our personal updates for the last 2 months. So we're gonna get back on track here. We are planning to, because we didn't have one in January, I think we're gonna try to get a second February episode to sort of make up for that. So look out for that. Anyway, some community updates. Probably the most notable one is going to be this locust contest that I had no idea about. That seems pretty cool. Basically a quote unquote, like, I mean, arguably bigger version of what was that one contest?
Kyoku?
Anyway,
The community one?
Locus.
Yeah, a couple of months ago there was also the Kyoku contest, which also involved original
Yeah.
songs and maps.
Yep, there was one of the official contests before it that also had custom songs, but it was a labor of love, right?
That one was remixes.
Yeah.
One of the earliest beat mapping contests was also fully original songs, but that was forever ago.
I wonder how well that went.
I don't know.
So how's this new one different from Labor of Love, I guess?
Original songs.
So it's totally original songs.
It's original everything, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you gotta have
Original storyboard, original background, I think, assets, and all that deal.
And they also changed up the voting system. So there's no judging panel, but it's not just a popularity vote either. Because every player that votes, they get given a randomized set of 5 maps, and they have to compare those 5 maps and like rate them. Like, how much do they like the song? How much do they like the aesthetic? How much do they like the map? So that'll be interesting to kind of like mix some more detailed voting with just having it be a community vote.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I mean, it's basically they also call it this, but it's basically an ELO voting system, where they're creating an ELO system for ranking the maps. I guess my only concern is being open to the average player. The only requirement is that they have an account for 6 months. There's no ranked maps or nothing. So there's going to be the vast majority of the votes are going to be from players, and so I guess we'll see what the outcome of that is.
And they can choose which difficulty they play, so your team actually gets penalized if you don't map a full spread and they can't play your diff.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of well, I mean, the average player plays what, hard diffs, I think? Hard and Sanes?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which I think is a good thing, because maybe that will encourage people to not do as much like tech wub, like slider spam stuff to like inflate the difficulty. Maybe.
I'd actually argue the opposite, because usually what is like, you look at the sets, I mean, they're just removing sliders. So they'll have their extra and then they'll just remove sliders as you go down the spread.
Yeah.
Again, animated tech pipeline, it has a lot of implication.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you to talk about that sometime.
You can talk about that anytime, but I mean, unless Mo wants to talk about it,
I think it's kind of cool to see some new, fresh ways to do like the ranking of tournament or contest maps in general, because we've seen so many ways, either just like a community publicity vote, popularity vote, or just like a panel of judges, and they usually all just get the same sort of complaints. So trying something new with a completely new contest format is pretty cool to see. And I've been talking with Mango Miser like for the past couple of years. He's been working on this for like well over like close to 2 years, maybe even more than that. So I've known about that this was coming for a long while, and it's pretty exciting to finally see this coming through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mango mentioned the contest to me once in like 2023. And he's like, yeah, we're working on this new contest. It's going to have original songs. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And then he didn't mention anything about it to me for years until like this past week, where he was like, I'm really nervous because we're publishing Locust this week. And I had to go into our chat. I had to rapidly do a search. I was like, did I forget something? What is this? What's he talking about?
Yeah, definitely. It's a cool project for sure. I guess we'll see how it comes out.
I'm excited to see what kind of songs we get from it, because we have so many like composers in the community that don't generally make original songs like that outside of like the developing and flourishing tournament scene for original songs, and that's been more developed than it was before. So there's probably more people that are actively engaged with it. to fill that part of a team now.
Yeah, although I think with the tournament stuff, don't a lot of them pay, like commission the composers?
So there's commissioning, but then there's also like volunteer. So like GTS actually, a lot of their artists are not commissioned. They just like essentially they're bribed with art. So like they'll like the artists get art out of like the composers get art out of it, and then like GTS's artists go and create assets and all of that stuff to like showcase the song. So that's kind of how GTS seems to work. But yeah, then there's also commissioning. So there have been more ties between Osu and just like the artists, like the composing community, for past couple.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So if you
I've
want to
also just
register,
been sorry, I've also just been kind of monitoring on the side because spoilers. I've been looking at Aspire. Spoilers, that's going to coming at some point, hopefully this year. I will just say this now. People have been asking about it to me for like the past few years, and well, I don't. The reason why there's a delay this year is because I don't want it to overlap with Locust because they're two pretty big
yeah,
kind of formats.
definitely.
And yeah, I've been talking with Mango to hopefully try not to overlap with him. I was planning to do it last year, but unfortunately some things came up and we didn't get around to it. But plan is this year, and yeah, I'll be interested to see if any of the new stuff that comes out from that we could rehash and reuse.
How do they actually get approval to get a custom title? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
Title, as in for the reward.
The Locust title.
Yeah. Because the only ones that have done that, I think, were Aspire and what OMBC or OBMC.
If I had to hazard a guess, it's because, you don't have a mapping judging panel, so if you tied a lead mapper to it, people would be very upset. But most contests of that kind of tier do usually end up having some kind of title, so it makes sense that it would end up getting its own. At least to me.
And it also just feels like the format's just like so different that it probably deserves a title on its like a separate title if we we're going to reward one from all the others.
Right. If you're gonna reward me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder how these titles are determined. But hey, look what it is.
I couldn't really see the details. It's pretty much just the whims of the higher ups, whether they'll allow it or not. Got to be honest.
Right. Especially for like I'm kind of surprised for like a brand new contest format that it would be done. Like a little bit, but I guess Mango Miser's pretty well known in the community, so I'm guessing that's just being pushed on his sort of name. That's kind of how these things go.
And it plays into how long they've been working on it too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Peppy or somebody else is involved pretty closely. Anyway, if you guys want to join, the registration is up for the Locust Mapping Contest. The other thing that's going on right now is the community choice. So the voting for that is open, I believe, still.
Yes, that's going to be open for like another 2 weeks, I think.
Okay.
Let me check. Yeah. You guys got 11 days to make 10 votes for your favorite maps of 2024.
And
go for it.
To have played it. To have completed the map. That's
yeah,
the hardest thing for mappers.
I have an awkward position in that one where I only have 4 maps to vote. I haven't really played anything from last year.
Yeah, I think that's very common. I have like maybe 15 maps on mine. So I think that's super common for mappers in general.
I have this problem where I play the maps when they're impending and then I forget to replay them after they get ranked.
That's fair.
It's pretty much the same for me. Like I nominate maps throughout the year, and then I think they're pretty cool maps, but then I don't play them after they get ranked, and so they don't appear on my community choice.
Exactly.
I should probably just log in and play them, and because I also play offline a lot as well, so that doesn't help either.
Probably not.
So people don't bug you?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, for a while I just turned off. At some point, I turned off the auto login thing because I can't remember why. And then I just never bothered to turn it back on again. So whenever I need to boot up OSoup, it's just automatically in offline mode because I can't bother to go get my password from the password manager. And yeah, it's just how it is usually for me now.
Yeah. But yep, that voting is going on, so I guess we'll see what we get out of it. Although I think it's interesting how many more maps there are compared to 2023.
Plus
Oh my-
63%.
Oh my god, you guys gotta see my options for community choice.
Is it
Hold
like
on,
2?
No, I have 4 actually, and this is all these. Just notice the trend in these maps, like how old they are. A lot of these are. So I guess a lot of what happened last year is mappers pulled their maps from Loved and ranked them. So we have 3 of those, and then one of them was just like it just took forever to get ranked. So
Yeah, the what standard revival has been doing a lot of revival type stuff with getting old sets pushed, which is pretty cool.
As well as like other individuals like Fiery Rage or Bloxy, they're just like, this classic set is epic, let's rank it instead too, and they're not even in the SD.
but that's just crazy because I'm just like, wow, I expected 0, and then I saw 4. I'm like, oh, that's what happened. Like, okay.
Yeah, I also just went to check because now I do actually have 4, and they're also pretty interesting choices where 2 of them are maps I nominated during that year, and 2 of them are just like remaps of like classics from back in the old days, like Magic Girl and a Masterpiece. Like people just sent me one. It's like, holy crap, someone ranked a new Masterpiece. Okay, I'll check this out.
Yeah.
That is
And
pretty cool.
that's my entire list.
Here we go.
To be fair, that Magic Girl map is pretty cool. I do like that one.
Yeah, we're really playing the game out here, everyone. Let's just like we
This is
are
the mapping experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you go deep into the mapper pipeline, eventually you just run out of time to play games, and you stop playing it because you become bad, and it makes you sad and depressed.
Yeah, my performance or my ranking graph has been going down for the past few years. I'm down to 81,000 now. I'm pretty close to 6 digits. Gonna be pretty sad when that happens.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. It's crazy to think that, like, even just a couple of years ago, it was so much easier to get into whatever X rank you were aiming for, right? You aiming for 5 digits, way easier back then than it is now. So yeah, I always find that interesting. My only chance of getting 5-digit was before I started playing the game.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I very easily could, if I wanted to, sit down and play whatever PP format is popular these days, but I don't find that fun. I never
Yeah.
did, even when I used to play regularly to just to play the farm maps. I'd rather just get the PP organically, if I could.
We've been getting so many Vocaloid maps ranked lately that I've just been having the time of my life. I don't care what kind of map it is as long as it's epic, and most of the Vocaloid maps are pretty epic, so it's pretty good. I'm eating well, guys.
Yeah, it's nice that especially a lot of the sort of the not Vocaloid mappers, like you have like Iron Cat pumping like 2-3 different Vocaloid sets in the last like month, which is pretty nice. Anyway, so that's community choice. And then the other thing that's going on right now is the a mentorship program. Not right now. Right now, it's we're evaluating mentor applications, but in a week, mentee applications will be open for the 29th cycle of the community mentorship program. So if you're interested in getting mentored in mapping, modding, or storyboarding, or even mentorship, I suppose, but like how to be a mentor kind of thing, that is an option for you. So go ahead and check that out. I think everyone here, Mo, has like a mentoring experience. Were you a mentee, Mo? I don't remember.
No, I was not a mentee. I was a mentor from, I think, the very beginning. I can't remember if it was one season later. But basically from the very start, I did it for just over a year. I think I did.
Yeah. I remember you mentoring Cook Pow for a while.
That was a very like a side deal. It's like I was kind of like off unofficially mentoring him, I guess, for a little while since he was always asking me questions and such. I thought, okay, well, I'll help him along as much as I can. And then he wanted to take it further and actually do interact with the official mentorship, so I took him in there. And even though I personally didn't do much in like the official mentorship, I think he actually like interacted with it quite a lot and has helped him on his journey to becoming a mapper, which he actually got some stuff ranked very recently. I'm pretty proud of him for that.
Oh, really?
Well, congratulations, Pao.
Yeah, it's been a pretty harsh journey for him, and he's finally made it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's good. January 25th, you got something ranked actually. Pretty cool.
That was the Christmas triangle, or whatever the Christmas tune that they had on the main menu. I think they had ranks, yeah.
And it's always really nice to when your mentees actually stick around.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
I think how was yours? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Oh well, kinda, yeah. When I took him in season 20, whatever it was you guys are on now.
Yeah. It takes mentees like, I don't know. Sometimes it takes them a couple of years after you've like mentored them to actually piece things together and pave some sort of path for themselves. Yeah. But it's always worth seeing it. It's especially if you're still around. So, like, I had that experience with the Bushy. I think it's like I taught him, I don't know, in like 2019 or 20 something like that. And then he started actually making relatively like put together maps in 2021, 2022, that area. So payoff takes a while sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah, everyone learns at their own pace, but once they get, I feel like when it comes to mapping, there's that click that happens, and then you just understand. Oh, I know how to get the flow in. I know how to get these. I know how to get the patterns to look nice. Once that click happens, I think it all just like falls together, and it's always nice to see someone actually finally get to that point.
Yeah, I actually still remember the map that click, I think, finally happened for me. I remember showing it to Mir, who was my mentor at the time, and he was like, "Wow, this is a lot better."
Yeah.
And it wasn't like amazing or anything like that, but it was like a very significant change in, I guess, the mentality was the biggest thing. Just like my mentality, like I figured out how to make patterns actually patterns.
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned from like mentoring people is like as much theory as you can feed someone, at some point it's just waiting for that click to happen, and you can try a lot of things, you can't force that click to happen. At some point it's just like, I don't know how you would go the best way to make that happen. I think it's just like you just well, the meme is you keep mapping, map more, just start again.
Okay.
I guess that's kind of the only thing, isn't it?
So here's the thing. So I've when I was mentoring, I was blasting my mentees with theory for a while. I'm just like, here's essentially your info dump. And then so what happens is they ended up like not mapping as much because it's like what you need to do, the mentees need to do is they need to map so they can get feedback, even if you're giving them like new ideas via all the theory. So I just find that if you have them for like, a short amount of time, it's not enough time to actually like speed up their cycles of like okay, like they try something, they get new ideas, then they try something again, and then they get new ideas and all of that. So it's like if you want to accelerate a mentee's growth, you have to accelerate that feedback cycle. But it's really hard to do that just because of like your schedule has to be available, their schedule has to be available, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the time, it's like you're not getting people optimizing to become mapping machines. Like that's not their full time job. So it's
I think
tricky.
that there's, yeah, it is tricky, and I think like if you just info dump them, you give them so many choices, I guess, that they run into choice paralysis and they just can't map, right? Like they are looking for a way to sort of consolidate all the theory that you've given them into that one object placement, whereas the better way to do it, I think, is just to constantly be mapping, right? You can't get stuck on like, oh, what's the theory behind this object placement? And I think that's something that I've run into, and I've run into as a mentor is, I try to give them all this background, like, oh, you got to create contrast, you got to emphasize this, blah, 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 blah. And then they just don't map as a result, right? They takes them way too long to map.
Yeah.
So
I
at a
mean, it's like it is a balance because honestly, if you are just mapping and you're not getting those feedback cycles,
oh yeah,
then
yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like I still remember when Mir was basically making a map a day, and they were pretty much all the same for like the first month or two because it was just like optimizing his like editor is workflow. And so he wasn't actually learning like applying new ideas to the maps. He was just kind of like going through and just getting faster at making them. So
Mhm.
I know that can also happen. That's why you need some new ideas. Like they do need to branch out. So I still think that like my system would have worked better if instead of having a lecture every week, it would have been a lecture every 3 weeks. And then like they would have actually had to they would have had to do their homework essentially, and then it would probably work
Yeah.
better. But that's also very hard getting mentees to do their homework.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mentees get burned out too, just like all of us.
Whenever I tutor my art classes, I never like do it with like specific theories to teach or tools to learn. What we do instead is we have a different project that I come up with for them every single month. And like we'll always do like some basic step-by-step slides to review the tools, and then and then they're kind of on their own. And then if they finish early, I make them add more to their project or do it again, but like with like a slightly different theme. And I think that's really helpful. Like it depends on like what kind of approach you want to have to learning something. Like do you want to just like enjoy the process, or is there a specific end goal you're desperately trying to get to?
That is a pretty interesting method to go about it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone has their own teaching style as well.
Oh yeah,
Mine's
yeah.
just mostly being, at least recently, I've been more passive teaching rather than active. So I'll banking on them to come to me with questions, and I'll sit down and go through their questions or their map and say, okay, here's what I would do to improve, etc.
Yeah, that's my current approach as well, just because burnout, you have to be motivated to like really be actively hounding them, which is something that I did early on in my mentorship, but at the same time, like the payoff for it is, I don't think, worth the sheer energy that it takes on the side of the mentor, because at the end of the day, the mentee has to reciprocate that energy. Um, Otherwise, you're just sort of throwing the energy away, right? Um, and I don't know if it really made much of a difference in their progression, versus them just coming to me whenever they had something, right? So
Yeah. Also, something I learned with like teaching theory is if you're only like a very entry level mapper and you don't know much, then theory helps. However, at some point, even like basic theory, like sharp angles, they feel comfy to play. There's always going to be exceptions, especially in like standard mapping. And so when you see mentees like apply your theory so rigidly that the map just has like the best way to say is like there's no personality to the map because they're just following so strictly to the rules that you kind of taught them. It's just some things about just
Yeah.
pure theory doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like when I hear people like, or when I see people telling people to like just put the jump on the snare, and I'm like, okay, but like, is that what we're trying to actually emphasize here? Why is the snare important? Especially if it's just like every beat. The snare is not a very interesting element, and emphasizing that is resulting in your map not really emphasizing anything in particular. But that's just kind of one of those quote unquote theories that people learn.
I think it's also a thing where this is also going to relate to some of the stuff that I've done in my mapping, like my theory talks a bit. I mean, in YouTube videos a while back, is what I've done is I learned how to map based mostly on feeling, and then I go back and when I analyze maps, I see, oh, this happened because there's strong sound here, or whatever. I do the map first and then apply the theory after. Whereas when it comes to mentoring, what a common mistake is you apply the theory first and then try to map afterwards, which doesn't come with the same results in a map.
Um, what's your what's a theory, I guess, in your perspective that a lot of mappers these days don't really fully understand? And you're kind of like that theory guy. I mean, you make lots of YouTube videos on it. So I'm
Yeah.
curious what your thoughts on that are.
Ooh, I'm gonna need to think about this one, I think. Uh, I haven't seen too many of the stuff that's been ranked recently, so I can't really comment on like stuff that's been ranked recently or like completely new mappers of the recent age. But
Hmm.
a common thing people try to say is, oh, if you want to jump, it needs to be like a strong sound or whatever. And I've also done it
Yeah.
several times where I make a map and I decide not to put a jump at some point for whatever reason. And says, oh, this is a strong sound, you should like increase the spacing here. Or it's like, but there's a sharp, you should do like a sharp angle here or something like that. It's like, yeah, I can see your reasoning, but it doesn't feel like what I want to do. And that's something I see a lot of like beginner inexperienced mappers get wrong is like just because the theory may be sound, it doesn't necessarily mean it's always the correct choice to do so. I know
Yeah.
that's a pretty general mistake, I guess, because it can apply to like spacing or it can apply to angles or hit sounding, whatever. But
Yeah, I guess that's
that's one
kind
I've
of
seen a
like
lot.
what I was getting at with my thing. And I actually remember a Chew um, making his be an application modding guide. And one of the points that he was making was to not use consistency as justification for a mod post, because most of the time it isn't meant to be consistent, and that's okay. Um, so if you're going to use consistency as a justification, it really, really needs to be an actual consistency issue. And most of the time it isn't. So it's kind of like that, where they're taking that raw theory of consistency, this idea, and misapplying it to all situations.
I've definitely ran into that a lot with my past mentees. I'm just thinking of I had a few notable ones, but I'll try to refrain from calling them out. Where they would just like they'd start making maps only off of what I told them. And I'm just like, hold on, that's not what I meant. Too limiting. Problem.
Yeah, yeah. I've also found that is Benties take what you say very literally, so it's really important that you manage your phrasing in what you say. So yeah.
I've done a thing where I think a thing with we mentioned Pug Power a while ago. I taught him a while back was a lot of maps use like angles between like 5 and 15 degrees when they like offset them. Like say if they put a square, they don't have a square perfectly 90 degrees on the screen. It's usually tilted like 5 to 15 degrees. I'd say, yeah, you could maybe do that with some of your patterns here, and then he decided to apply it to everything. And it's like,
Squares.
this hasn't quite turned out what I wanted.
Yeah, right. I think I remember, Mir telling me stuff like that or whatever. Yeah.
I
Being a
remember
mentee is a
when
silly time.
Mir was just a mentee as well. I'm that old.
Yeah.
I think during that cycle he applied, and he put me as a second choice. I think as a mentor, so I was prepared to pick him as my mentee, and then Shirin swooped in and took him in for himself.
You got robbed.
Pretty much. Well, I did teach him some things during that cycle, so
That's the thing about mentorship is that you don't have to like limit yourself to just one person.
exactly, yeah. And he turned out to be like an insanely talented mapper as well. It's crazy how good he got.
Hmm.
The biggest thing with Mir is that he's just like giga motivated. Like he just mapped so much. Like honestly, I don't think you can become a good mapper. There's some element of talent there, but it's just mostly, I think, the sheer dedication, the effort. Like Mir's made thousands of maps. I'm sure he's only uploaded a fraction of that, but that's what it takes.
That's also another thing that some beginner mappers don't also get is that some of us experienced mappers have a lot of stuff mapped, but nobody else has ever seen it. And like, I've seen some mappers like, oh, I've got uploaded my first map. I need to get this one ranked, and it must be this first one because it's my first one, and I want it ranked. Whereas we have probably, I'm gonna hope it's the same for you, but I personally at least have more maps just sitting there as failed projects than they have ever started.
And I think that's
And
true
that's
for
just
any
part of the
kind of
process.
like realm of creation too, like the average artist you're gonna see getting like a ton of likes on Twitter or like in the art gallery or something, they will have sketchbooks full of art stowed away somewhere or burned away or thrown away. But they'll have like thousands and thousands of sketches and stuff before they get anywhere good with it. And they say it takes like 10,000 hours to get good at something.
Yeah.
I might I might be an exception, but it's not like I didn't pay that time tax. I just paid it through very agonizing creation of like the stuff that I do have. Like so that's my thing. It's everything just like I was getting things like, oh, the first map took like the second map just took like 40 hours or 45 hours or something. It was like it was a 5-minute map. Things like that, and it's like that carried with me I think until through like 2020 even, where it just took so long to make every single map. So I was just paying that tax as I was making the maps instead of like by just iterating.
I think that worked for you. I don't think it will work for most people. I think for you, I mean, you're very analytical in general. So you analyzed other people's maps and figured out
Yeah.
how to apply it to your own. Most people, I don't think, can do that. And the other thing is that you're a pretty good player. And if you're not a good player, it's a lot harder to take that approach. So if you
Yeah, and it's also
most
very
people have to
painful.
supplement with just that too. But like I mean, you were giving feedback to Mir and Moon and so many other mappers that were just pumping out maps. So you sort of like by proxy saw a lot of maps and in a way mapped in that way in terms of giving feedback and analyzing maps. So I think that is what helped your mapping. But I don't think most people can do that.
No.
Um,
Do not do what I do. Do as I say, don't do as I say, not as I do. Really. Like
yeah.
that's don't do that.
I feel like I might be a bit mix of both though as well though, because when I work on a map, I am very meticulous about how I place each object. I will spend several minutes on just like a handful of objects at a time sometimes, and just being very
Mhm.
careful about it all. But a lot of times, like when we're going back to like I've started so many maps, I just never got to finish it. I have most of them are just like the first two measures of the song, and if I feel like I can't have, I feel like if I feel like it's not going anywhere, I just don't continue it, even if I'll spend it all that ridiculous time doing it. But at some point, I'll either feel like I can continue this to the end, or I'll just not go back to it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah. Yeah, I think there's something else to add there. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that something that I try to tell myself is like, just place the circle. Stop thinking. Just I need to map more. That was something that Mir told me too. Because I very much so struggle with like choice paralysis, and I want it to be good like sort of that first time, but just telling myself, all right, I'll come back to this later. Just play something and move on. Helps.
Like, I get that feeling. Like, sometimes at work, I do like a lot of voiceovers for like our training, and sometimes people are like, how do you just do it? If I try, I get all tongue-tied and everything, and I'm like, I literally just go through and I just say it, and if I make a mistake, I just keep going. I just say it again. I don't stop recording and like restart the whole thing. And I think the same idea goes for mapping, because like it's very flexible. It's not like once you have it there, you can't move it ever again. Okay, sometimes it's very annoying to move it again because then all your patterns break, but you can let them break. That's fine.
Yeah. And like half the time, if you make a mistake, nobody notices. And that's the thing. It's like as a mapper, as the creator, you notice all those little mistakes, but other people, they don't. So we gotta always have to kind of remind ourselves that. It's one of the best pieces of advice that I got from Mir was, my problem was that I was often introducing a lot of like variety for the sake of variety, because I was getting bored. And Mir's big point there was the player is looking at this pattern for like half a second. You're looking at this pattern for an hour. You're getting bored of it. The player isn't.
Yeah, because they're only playing it for the 3 minutes at a time at most.
Yeah, right. Half the time they're not even playing it for that. They just rage quit whenever they miss.
And that's a key thing I like to tell people is when it comes to modding, something I do a lot is I usually try and look at it from the player's perspective, and I'll explain. Like if there's an issue, I'll say it from the player's perspective. And very rarely I will mention something from a mapper's perspective. I'll always try and point out issues from a player's perspective if I can, because I think that's just like the more important point. And usually, if it's a player perspective, if it's a tiny thing like a blanket, no player's really going to notice that within the half second of objects on screen. Those kind of things don't matter, and I think that's a key thing that a lot of beginner modders also just like forget about. If they want to like try and analyze it as a mapper, it's like no, you don't need to do that. That's not a lot of times that's not going to improve the map as a playing experience.
Well, that's interesting. That it sounds like you have the approach that mapping is like a player-oriented thing. And there is like that big divide of like mappers mapping for mappers and mappers mapping for players. Because I think the goal is a little bit different. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap, but there's that sort of difference. I don't know if you noticed that, Mo.
I'm a little bit of both. Whereas when I make maps, when I make maps, it's usually for myself, and I will put a lot of effort into making sure every single one of my maps is special to me. But when it comes to modding other people's maps and reviewing them and analyzing them, a lot of the time I'll review it as a player, because usually it's the playing experience that's more important. In the end, I think the playing experience is more important than the actual what the map is as an art piece, as some people like to call it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
My approach is somewhere in between, where when it comes to like just minor aesthetic things, I only point them out if I notice them when I'm test playing. If I only notice it when I'm in the editor, I don't bother. But on the other hand, this has made me more sensitive to notice things like slightly broken stacks when I'm playing, and sometimes it drives me crazy, so I guess it backfired.
I
Yep,
think
I've
that
done the
like
same.
slightly broken stacks are something that would stand out to a lot of players, though. I remember like being a new player, just maybe barely getting into insane dips kind of thing, and like, you'd see those broken stacks, and at that rank, you don't really know about anything about how maps are created or whatever, and you just think it's like a bug or something. You don't realize that it's just the mapper did an oopsie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of say I can notice if a stack is like 1 unit off, which doesn't really help. But sometimes I point them out if I notice it during play. But sometimes I just have to like stop myself and saying like, no, this doesn't help. Just don't bother. You're just going to make
Yeah.
them make them feel weird about you.
Yeah. But anyway, we've talked about that, but we'll back up a little bit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into mapping, and then how that carried on to where you are today?
Oh, so this might be a bit of a long one because when it comes to mapping, I feel like I've dabbled in like pretty much everything at this point. I've done mapping, I've done storyboarding, I've done pit sounding, I've even done like contests, hosted contests, participated contests, even judging for contests. But right from the start, I don't know. I think it was like 2 years into my playing career, I guess you can call it. I decided, okay, I'm gonna try map something as you randomly would when you're really into a game like Osu. And yeah, it didn't really take off anywhere. And then I remember back when they did the beat map spotlight or highlights, I can't remember what it was like back in 2014, what they called it. There was a map by satellite, a Senya map, obviously. I think it was Yulelu Koiwa, whatever it was. I could find it later, but I remember playing that. I was voted in as like as a spotlight for that month, and I just had so much fun with that map. It was at the time by far the most fun I'd ever had on a beat map, and I wanted to recreate that experience. So I just downloaded. So I went on YouTube, looked up Senya songs that haven't been mapped in Osu yet, and tried my hand at that one. Uh, it's called Cinderella Avatar. It was uploaded December 2014, I think, at some point. It was like way, way back. And that was the first map I tried pushing. And as with a lot of people trying to rank their first map, it just doesn't get anywhere. You get loads and loads of people modding it, and it just doesn't get anywhere because it's just not very good. So eventually I learned to move on to new maps, just move on to the next map. And next map was another Senya, and that one actually got somewhere somehow. I actually found my break in that one. And then yeah, it just carried on from there, and I just mapped more Senya songs. Trying to think what happened next after that. Yeah, I think after that, pretty much how I got into the YouTube stuff and the theory stuff. Charles 445 is a old name. As I don't know how many people remember that name these days. But he also did a lot of like mapping theory kind of stuff. And I remember one of the last things he did before he kind of just took his retirement for the game was a little podcast about feeling in maps or something along those lines, and how certain patterns and mapping styles evoke certain feeling in that. And I did a video response to his little monologue, and that kind of took off. I think I got like a few thousand views, and people like really valued my opinion and things. And I thought, oh, I could probably keep doing this for like other parts of mapping. And so I kind of went through all of my theory at that time of how I've analyzed maps and what I've learned through mapping, and then eventually applied to the BN, and then kind of took off from there.
And what year was this when you applied to BN?
BN was I can't remember. 2016, 17.
Okay.
I'm
And
making
then
guesses now.
so then after you became BN, you eventually worked your way into what, QAT probably?
Yeah, so I was BN for 9 months before I was asked to become a QAT. And I think a huge help of that was because I was doing videos on this theory and they wanted someone with my sort of like analysis, I guess, on the team.
When was this? Like, just time frame? Because I'm trying to remember when that was. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I'll be honest, I'm trying to remember as well. I think 2018. Well, my badge says 6 years, apparently.
Your
So
badge says 6 years. I don't buy it. I feel like you were in like late 2016, early 2017, that sort of area.
that was BN ship, I believe. Well, no, can't be.
Yeah. The reason why I'm saying that is because like I remember the QAT in 2018. And I mean, yeah, you were there, but you had already been there for quite a while.
Well, I was there at the end of the QAT. I was there. Well, I
Yeah,
unfortunately had the hand of killing the QAT. So
yeah. Upheaval and all of that.
yeah, I think it was like less than a year of QAT. They asked me to, hey, we want to like completely change the QAT and we want you to like take over because JB Hyperion is stepping down to focus on his personal life. I said, yeah,
Mhm.
I'll do it, and then got thrust into that chaotic world. And then after that, I kind of like, because I was so focused on the NAT, QAT stuff, I kind of stopped making YouTube videos, which is something I kind of regret doing, but circumstances and all that.
You plan to make more?
I want to make more, but there aren't any plans to at the moment, unfortunately. But I do want to.
Dang.
Because the
In case
thing
you
is, I
found
think my views on like mapping, like I talked about it earlier, I can like throw out theory, but without like having that kind of feeling. It's come full circle. I had Charles before I was talking about feeling. I said, oh, with that feeling, there's a bunch of theory I can apply to that. But now it's just like, yeah, I'm just back to just mapping my feeling again.
Yeah, I'm the same way, I think. It's interesting how like the way people map shifts over time.
We need that like that normal distribution meme where it's like you have like the guy that's just like I map by feeling, and then the peak is like you like basically mentioning all these crazy mapping terminology buzzword things, and they're freaking out, and then you see them at the end of the distribution curve with the hoodie and be like I map by feeling. We need that. That's
Yeah.
describing this moment.
I
That's
have
perfect.
seen that. I have seen somebody make that before.
Yeah.
I am guilty of going into modding posts and typing, oh, your momentum here is off. You should be using kick sliders or whatever the hell I'm on about. And say, like, I look back like, yeah, you were not a good modder. And I was BN back then as well. I was like, yeah, you were not a good BN.
Yeah, Nafi found it.
No, I made it.
Oh, you just made this?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What?
Yes. Yes.
How did you do this so fast?
I have my sources.
What the hell? Nafi's too good.
Image flip, my beloved.
Wow, that's amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna go tweet this from the VAT account. Thank you.
Right in the live stream.
Yeah,
What the hell? This is multitasking.
yeah. It's not multitasking. It's part of the stream content. Don't worry about it.
Yep. Uh, so after you became NAT leader, what did you do in that role, Mo?
I was mostly just kind of the bridge between like the actual NA team members, and their role was to manage the BNs and being the bridge between those lot and the higher ups being like Peppy and Ephemeral, who are like trying to keep tabs on the game whilst they work on like everything else. Kind of like a delegation basically. And yeah, basically just managing the NET, setting up meetings, trying to like progress like the ranking criteria, that kind of deal. And it's been a pretty rocky journey. And
Yeah.
I've kind of these days I've kind of been I'm more of a backseat kind of deal with kind of person when in the NAD now, especially since Hy-Vee and Radar they've taken the reins of like being the leaders now. They've taken them. They are fantastic people. We couldn't have had better leaders than those two, honestly. I'm so
Mhm.
glad we have those two. But yeah,
Yeah.
I used to do what Hy-Vee and Radar do, just not as good as they did.
I mean, Radar just came back, right?
Radar just came back, yes, but he was also just like
Yeah.
he was alongside Hy-Vee at start
At the
initially.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long since Radar stepped down, so it's like he never even left.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been like a whole year or something. It feels like a long time to me.
Mm, that's basically yesterday.
I guess for you, you're ancient.
Wait, no, no, don't tell anybody that.
You know,
Yeah.
there's like this dichotomy here of oh, 2019, that's so old. 2019, that's like yesterday.
It always just feel like that because I remember, like at the start, I just said, "Oh, I've been here for nearly, well, just over 12 years now." It's like it does not feel like 12 years at all. How has 12 years gone by? There's like people who are playing my maps where my maps are like older than those lot are. It's like, what? How?
Yeah. How did you even learn how to map?
It was so I mentioned satellite being like a huge like inspiration for me. So I just opened up their maps in the editor and just like tried to recreate what they did. Um, Usually not very successfully, but eventually I learned to apply my own sort of like style to it and work around learning flow and flow and like aim patterns like slowly over time. And back then, the mapping scene was like very hard and like trying to be not what's the term, over mapping. I think that was a term that's been thrown a lot, and people were very against like adding too many streams or whatever when there's no sound or whatever. So I was trying my best to conform to those, making sure my jumps aren't too big, making sure I'm not adding too many streams or whatever. And then Skystar and Hollowings came along, and they just broke all of those conventions that people had tried to set up. And
Yep.
it's like, I tried. I thought Skystar was really cool at the time. I also tried to copy what they did a lot. Whereas Hollowings, initially with Hollowings, I could not understand at all what their goal was with their maps. I just looked at it and thinking, what the hell is this rubbish? But over time, I have just learned to like them and try to incorporate their sort of like mentality to mapping as well. And that kind of like that's the kind of style I've put like mashed together with my own, pretty
Yeah.
much.
I mean, it's funny you say that because that that was not unusual for the time. Hollow Wings was like very much so hated until probably like 2019.
They were until they weren't.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
right.
Like it was a very weirdly rapid switch, but I appreciate it that it did switch.
Yeah, I never really. I wouldn't say hate for me personally for Hollowing. It was just didn't understand.
Yeah,
I just needed to look at them more and get better at the game before I could.
that's a vibe. I was the same way for sure. I mean, it's especially when you're I don't know what rank you were, but like when I was learning map, I was playing insane diffs, which I'm not much better than now, but uh, I've made up for that by just looking at a lot of maps and analyzing them and stuff. But you kind of are, your initial mapping is very much so molded by what is going on sort of at the time. And like when I was getting into mapping in 2021-ish, 2020, it was a lot of like Monstrata, Sotarks, Browy C, or Brobiach rather. And so that's kind of what I saw as like the normal map. It took a while before I was able to realize, no, that is not the only way to map.
And I mean,
Yeah, I was slightly before that. I think Frostmourne was a big name. RLC, those were the names that when I was around and learning to map.
Yep.
Yep,
Oh.
me too.
Another
Oh,
big
boy.
thing with like the whole overmapping meta was just people had shit hardware. Like, so you would get some mappers that would have better ears or better hardware, and they would be like, there's definitely sounds here. And then everybody else that couldn't hear like the high end at all, they'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? Kind of thing, too.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Hardware has definitely gotten better and more accessible. Is fair. Yeah, I go back to like what was it, Genryu Kaiko, where everyone was complaining about the hi-hats. I'm like, it's very obvious, but
They are now.
yeah, now they are. At the time, maybe they weren't.
I think another map was at the time that people talked about was Asymmetry. That had a lot of people on about, oh, this is overmapped. It was the infamous the song is a tragic love map with the background as well. That was when the QAT was like over analyzing everything, and that's why everyone was so scared to like do overmapping. And then that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and everything started to change rather.
This song is about a tragic love. Oh boy.
Yeah. That brings back some memories if you were around, doesn't it?
Asymmetry. I mean, that was definitely one of the pivotal moments in just like mapping history. Like, you can't look at that and be like, yeah, nothing happened. No, that was the beginning.
I
New
didn't
era.
experience it. I just experienced all the memes.
I mean, it essentially killed like the idea of the QAT being the gatekeepers of quality. Like that was like because they essentially robbed them of their ability to enforce. So, yeah, it was too much. It was overreach and then like throttling, and that actually, I mean, that's been the frustration of the people who have cared about quality for like a decade at this point. So. Because the sentiment never left. It's just that the teeth did, and they left a long time ago.
Yeah. Vibes.
Yeah, I've also been on the receiving end of the QATs like last minute DQ in a map. Like my first ranked map was DQ'd at the last minute because the QAT wanted to do nitpicking work on it. So I know that feeling. But yeah, times have changed, and for better or worse.
Yeah. So obviously you created a lot of YouTube videos on your theory. Was there any theory that you think that you made a video on that didn't hold up super well over time?
Let me look through my list and see what I've done. So I think towards the end of the videos I did 3 videos back to back. I think they were called Strain, Pressure, and Tension, which kinda I just stole those words from like actual like music theory and tried to apply it to mapping kind of semi-forcefully, and I don't think those really hold up to anything. I think that there's some stuff in there that makes sense, like it's more just what people these days would call like intensity, for example, like the song's getting more intense here, you want more active stuff, but I try to overcomplicate it essentially.
Yeah.
I think that if I had to like point out something that I made that didn't work out, probably that.
That's fair. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap between like mapping theory and OSU, and then there's like also a lot of things that don't really work. So
I mean, that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense to me.
I think that it's just that with terms, Osu's always kind of wanted more colloquial language. Like they wanted stuff that because the music theory terms themselves are kind of too formulaic. So people have just expressed. It's not like the concepts that you talked about were there, but it's just the ongoing like evolution of language around mapping. Because now it's just like because back in your time, right, people were saying flow for everything, right, and now it's like we've gotten so far away from that. People are a lot more precise, but it's not quite at the level of okay, like we're actually interweaving like music theory into right. So
Yeah, that was a difficulty when I first started learning. Is like everyone was talking about flow, but the word flow on its own just doesn't mean anything. Like these, like now I don't understand what it means, but back then, as a learner, you just don't know what that means, and there's barely any resources out there explaining what it means either. It's just something you just had to try and pick up for yourself, which was difficult.
I mean, flow by itself, I don't think really. It just means just something different to everyone, which is why it's not a great term. Um, it unless you have some kind of descriptor, like if you say like linear flow or circular flow, okay, then that actually means something. People can intuitively understand what that means. But flow by itself, like oh, this flow's good, this flow's bad, that doesn't. That's really then up to the interpretation of whoever is reading that or viewing it. You can't really argue with it.
Yeah, and I think that's when I was making videos back then. My goal was to like try have some sort of like standard for defining what flow meant, which is why a lot of my videos do have the word flow in the title.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's useful as a reference point, but it's just like it could mean like one of three things. So it's more of now we see that we have kind of language to describe those three things instead of using the thing that could describe all of them. So
Yeah. The other thing is also like OS is a global game. There's a lot of different cultures going into it, and there's a lot of language barriers going around. Where it's like you want to try and explain things as simple as possible, so the buzzwords and the fancy terms doesn't really help much, or very often. So I try to avoid him now as much as I can these days.
Mhm. Yeah. And did any of sort of like the counterpoint to my earlier question? Did any of the videos that you made particularly stand out as holding up very well, or being more important or something like that to you?
So I think one of the better videos that I made, at least in terms of the theory ones, is uh when it comes. It was the anime song one where I was talking about how Japanese songs are more popular because of like their language supports more like stronger, sharper staccato like sounds compared to like English where it's more held sounds. And while that theory still has a lot of like holes and flaws to it, I think that one still holds up with like a lot of I would say correct-ish kind of ideas with it. I would say that one's probably one of my more successful ones. And I put a lot of research effort into that one as well. So
Mhm. Yeah.
That one still makes perfect sense to me to this day because every time I try to map English, I cry.
yeah,
Because I'm like,
I don't think I've ever mapped any other language, and it's difficult.
yeah, and it's like, where are your consonants? Where do the where are the hits in the melody? You're just saying stuff. It just kind of, and I mean, like it flows really nicely, but it's just a whole other ballpark. And a lot of the songs are also a lot slower too, because English is just naturally a slower language, syllables
Yeah,
wise.
I think
Yeah.
if I was to go back and like make a follow up video, there's like so much of that sort of theory between like Japanese songs or like East Asian, and maybe possibly in general compared to like Western songs of like depending on their language and how they approach music. Like what I've talked about in that video turns out just to be a very small size of the cake of how music theory and like composition works and what's appropriate for a rhythm game. So maybe if I actually do manage to find a way to come back, I could follow up on that. But we'll
All
see.
right.
Cool.
So since we're on the topic of your videos, let's talk about your like theories of like cursor momentum and angles and such. How do you think that's holds up today? Like, because you were talking about this stuff in like 2015, 2016. This was even before Pishy Fat started to go off with his videos. And your videos were kind of like the most shared resource of like how do you do this? Like sharp angles mean this, like wide angles mean this, et cetera, et cetera. So what are your thoughts on that today?
So, just to briefly go back to the start of that, when I was talking about like linear momentum, that was a video response to, I said earlier, to Charles 445. He was talking about like momentum, well, like flow and like sharp angle and all that, and he compared it to handwriting, I believe it was. I thought, okay, yeah, sure, that kind of makes sense, but it also just sounds silly in a way. So I just tried to take what he said and put like a more rigid sort of theory on top of it. And for these days, I still think like those theories still kind of hold up, where the sharper the angle, the more you're stopping your hand movements, and I think that still applies to maps today. But what I've also noticed with maps today and players, and expand more to just players in general, is people's ability to play this game have just risen. The skill ceiling has gotten incredibly high. People are talking about like flowing maps or like maps with like wide angles everywhere, where back in those days that would just been like sacrilege, for example, in terms of like flow. So
Well, I
even
I
though
have some counterpoints actually on that, just because something that I noticed with like 2012, 2011, 2013 types of maps is they actually had lots of symmetry. And they also had kind of wide angles interspersed a lot. So my counterpoint, something I found that would have complemented that video was like the setup of like how cursor movement is going through the rest of the map before it. Because if you're already coming out of like a linear path, right? And it's like you're already going in circles, the wide angles tend to actually not be like as harsh as they'd seem in isolation. But a lot of your like stuff applies really well when you're starting from nothing, right? If you're just building up, like yeah, the angular circular stuff will make a lot more sense than if you're like starting from scratch of like, oh my god, here's this linear jump that's gigantic, like a Lewis cipher map or something, right? So
yeah, I think a part of that is probably to do with like repetition or just like what's the word? Just like conditioning the player to doing a pattern. So you could just like either, as you said, symmetry is a good one where you can if you if you're introducing symmetry throughout your map, then if you have objects on the left side, oh, the player's going to expect them on the right side. Then, yeah, that kind of like takes some of the surprise away from that. But if you were to just look at the patterns in isolation, those like movement theories, like the angles and such, that still kind of applies, but just made like only as a small part of it. That's at that point, it's like looking for the like missing the forest for the trees. At that point, if you just look too much into it.
yeah.
That's probably like a critical point against my videos, is what you're saying there.
Yeah. And also, something that I guess a question here is, so what do you think? How do you think AR like affects all of this? Because like something I notice in play is when you have more objects on the screen, people tend to just try to flow through them, and they're not really snapping, so that actually negates a lot of the discomfort. So it decreases the chance they hit it because now they have to be more precise in like, are we actually going through the objects at the correct rate? And then but at the same time it's like, how much of that should the mapper account for?
Um, I'm just trying to think as a I'm already trying to think as a player how would they approach a map with like low AR versus like high AR and what changes already. One sec, I'm just trying to think through it. It's a bit weird for me because I actually did learn to play low AR, so I
Hmm.
do know kind of some of the tricks to it.
So you would actually like play the map and you'd be snapping through the objects, and you wouldn't actually like have that effect where, oh, I'm just gonna float through it, I'm just gonna treat it all as one.
I personally try to like snap to each object as much as I can personally, but I
Okay.
can see how, at least in the like the average player will try to like snap. They'll see very few objects on the screen at a time, and usually they'll just snap to them because that's just all they can see. And then when they see a stream, they'll see a lot more, so they'll flow through those. So when they're surprised by like low AR, they'll try to just naturally try to flow through them, probably because they're
Mhm.
like trying to interpret it as a stream like subconsciously, even though
Yep.
that's most of the time doesn't really work. That's
Yep.
probably how it is.
Okay. Yeah, I had to get into the nitty gritty there because it's just like I remember when the PP. So the reason this actually affected PP at one point. So Zexar actually like he looked at your video and was like, "This is law." And so when he pushed the PP rework stuff, you ended up having one that like tried to blunt the impact of sharp angles and then kind of bump up like the difficulty of wide angles like at an algorithmic level. And so what you ended up having is stuff that was like people were making like PP maps when they were just mapping in like 2012 2013 style like maps where the wider angles were a lot more common. And I think this is like this sort of thing, especially with like momentum changes, kind of peaked with this Lhasa map called Zane, I think. And I think that's what kind of showed everyone is like, okay, look, these things are not like inherently uncomfortable, and we shouldn't algorithmically design a way to do this. So
Yeah, when
Zane
you
is
mentioned
so
that Zexar
fire.
actually looked at my videos, I actually kind of laughed at it, thinking, "That's yeah, maybe shouldn't have done that in retrospect."
no, 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 no. I mean, so this stuff is always fun as a funny put in history because when you make something, you have no idea how it's going to be interpreted like down the line. But it's just like there's no regret here. It's just funny, right? Like
It is, yeah. Look,
It
it is
is.
quite funny that actually
It
happened.
takes on a life of its own kind of thing.
yeah, because I mean, think of it like I mean, someone else could have come up with the same thing, and it's just like, well, it doesn't make it like any less valid that it ever happened. It's just funny, like, oh, this is the domino that triggered this down the line.
I mean, just think about Charles 445 and polarity, right?
oh,
How many people,
yeah,
how many people took that little video and extrapolated across every single possible permutation, like way beyond what Charles is actually intending.
yeah, and it's just like you know how some people like some mappers have become so prolific they've been copied to death where their style doesn't even feel like their style anymore. I mean, it's the same idea. It's like they had like they were just doing their thing, and then other people kind of like went and messed it up, right? So that's how it goes.
Yeah. But then again, at the same time, it's like the theories I try to put in my videos aren't completely false, even if they've just been taken like way, way beyond the scope of that what they should have been. Like I
Yeah.
still would stand by that. Like a really sharp, like 5 degree jump thing is easier to play than like the same thing with the same spacing, but this time is like 170 degrees, for example.
Yeah, you would probably just like, but I imagine now you'd use more qualifiers to talk about it. So because like your understanding is probably developed, like community's understanding is kind of developed. So you now need to like use a couple more like qualifiers, like, oh, this is the circumstances in which this theory applies.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like at this point, like if I was to go through and talk everything over again, I'll just write a big asterisk after pretty much everything.
Does not always apply. It's not a universal rule.
Exactly, yeah.
There's ways
Yeah.
to make it work otherwise. Like I think like one of the most interesting sort of like in this vein where my mentality shifted a lot was, when I was learning mapping and I was like watching the Pishy Fit videos, watching Mo's videos, I had this mentality that wide angles were bad, right? And this was very common in like 2020 and 2021, I think, this viewpoint among a lot of mappers. And then, you meet people like Uber Zolik that actually think that wide angles are more comfortable and they're easier to aim. Um, and Uber Zolik's whole point with that is that that's the kinds of maps he plays. It's all he plays is these wide angle, like sort of, flowy movement sort of maps. Um, and as a result, that's easy for him. and I was like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think that there is some element of player conditioning where we're putting out all these maps that have sharp angles, and that's what players are practicing as a skill set, and as a result, they believe that that is more comfortable because that's what they're used to. So
I have a point on that. And my point on that is, I think it's if things are like arranged in like lines and curves and circles or whatever, they are easier to like read. Even if they might be physically harder to hit due to the momentum stuff that Mo has talked about. But sharper angles are harder to process, and so harder to read, and then easier to actually physically move through. It's just that when you raise the AR enough, now everyone can focus a lot more easily. So they're not noticing that they're hitting the sharp stuff. They're just seeing, oh, there's one note and there's another note. But you can see this with like lower diffs and like how we make lower diffs, where our lower diffs are you're essentially doing figure eights around the screen, right? Like everything is in a linear like pattern, like one object leads to the next. But it starts, and it's like that's how our streams are designed. But you can see that when you start adding in sharp angles in the streams, it's like you actually start to increase the difficulty of reading, because it's like now you have to snap to this and then move this way and do all this stuff. So I think that's something that was intuitively understood but kind of lost over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think another thing is also what makes some of the sharp angle jumps easier to read also is at some point people discovered that if you just do like a back and forth kind of deal, like the classic 1-2 style jumps, those are like way easier to read than say like the constant triangle kind of deal like you see in very classic old PP farm maps. I think, like for example, Best Friends or Diamond.
Yep.
People also figured out that literally if you add a combo every other note, it looks cleaner. Because in older maps, if you don't have a combo, you're more tending to like make stars or other shapes, because if you have the follow points, they're going to line up in a way that looks nice. And
Boom.
a lot of current maps are nice to play, but if you have the follow points on, it looks horrible.
Yeah, we're in the era of follow point mapping, actually. With this
I'm saying
Yeah,
it's
I
the
think
opposite. We got rid of the follow points.
No, it's just like, but people design with that in mind with their comboing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I mean by we're in the era of caring about follow points in our like pattern design. And that's been standard for like over a decade. This is yeah.
And
Even if no one actually said it, people were doing it.
I don't think the average person even realized that's why it's usually a 1-2 combo. They're just like, oh yeah, that's what's done, so I'll do it too.
Yeah, thanks, Skystar.
yeah, yeah. I think that's like a big reason that people find it's like some mappers like ugly or whatever, is that they don't do that with their jumps and they don't really care about the follow points. Um, so like I would think like people like Cherry and whatnot, that a lot of people would consider the maps like ugly, and it's I think a lot to do with how they don't really conform to comboing for the follow points and things like that.
Well, Cherry's like what? That's like one of 7 factors for Cherry. So that's
Yeah,
like.
yeah. No, yeah. I'm not saying it's the only thing by any means.
Yeah.
By any means, for sure. So Mo, you've been around for a long time. What do you think of like the changes to the BNG over the last couple of years, especially after you stepped down from NAT leader?
So there definitely has been a lot of changes. It started out with like BMs just being like worried about trying to follow as much as they can what standards the NAT set for them, and at some point we were probably too far in that direction. So we've tried changing things up and like moved it to the other side, whereas like we give more control back to the BNs, more control back to the community, and there's arguments to be made that we've also like pushed back on that side too far as well, and we don't know where the correct balance is. I don't know where the correct balance is, but the game has to change. The meta has to change at some point, and even though it may not be in a very nice place at the moment, I can't tell if it really is or not. I'm still kind of for my own opinion on that. The fact that it's changing is at least nice to see, I think.
So, how do you guys deal with the constraints of just being overall just community run? Like, you have like some light dev support, but the dev support comes fairly infrequently. So how do you guys deal with that?
With difficulty. So sometimes we do have to like just do like just do things ourselves. For example, the BN site, Pishy Fat just decided one day, right, I'm just going to design the whole system myself, and we thank him so much for that because it's helped us a lot. So, but the devs have been kind of over the years. They've been better. There's still a ways to go, but they've also been better at trying to support us in what ways they can. There's still a long way to go, as I said, but yeah, it's just a lot of trying to do things yourself, which sometimes is difficult because you need to find like either the resources or the motivation to do that and take things into your own hands.
Yeah.
See. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
As always, like that's like a never-ending battle. I'm smelling like Nafi silence like from across the way on that. I'm just like, good luck.
Yeah, I've just kind of come to accept it, which is why I'm not like raging or what have you about it, ranting about it.
Okay, I have a touchier question. There was a plot to delete the NAT last year. Can you tell me about that?
Oh boy,
he went there.
Hey, look,
Nafi's like,
I'm just saying, I'm not gonna implicate you in anything, but I would like to hear about your perspective on it, since I know you were around it, but
yes,
I'm not gonna say anything else.
I mean, I was kind of there from nearly the start of it. It started at COE, I think it was at 2023. I think Pishy approached me.
You guys did this shit while I was there. Okay, keep going.
So yeah, Pishy talked to me at COE about Mao and I have been talking. We want to do something because these are the issues, and I agreed with the concerns that they brought to the table. But looking back, the ways we went about tackling those issues were definitely not what we should have done. That's just kind of my opinion about it. But yeah, we just talked about it. We decided, okay, we've gone through so many different options. As like we decided, like just being as harsh as we can, to, like almost as nuclear as possible. For some reason, we decided, but nearly nuclear was like the option to go about it. And looking back, yeah, that was a stupid decision. Like all of us feel really bad about what happened.
Well, that's good. Remorse is good. It's just like, here's the thing. I think your approach would work well for other parts of like the internal like sect, but like the thing with this one was just like the current NATs probably would have agreed with a lot of like what you were generally trying to do, like the concerns. So it's kind of like it created a divide where you didn't actually have one. Meanwhile, there's like other internal organizations that I've heard like that there is a divide between like the community and the people like internally, and so like things might actually happen there. There's issues there, but yeah.
Yeah,
More
again, it's like I said. Again, like as I said, it's like the concerns there. I think the concerns were valid. It's just we didn't know how to tackle them, and so we just picked the worst way possible because we didn't know what to do.
What were you guys planning to replace it with?
My guy, we were rolling back.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for laughing. It's a bad idea.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's not.
I forgot. It's been a while. Okay.
Yeah, Nofi's been like a NAT/QAT as long, basically as long as I have, and so she's probably sitting there thinking, "Yeah, you've done some stupid stuff back then."
I
She sees
still
through this.
remember because Nafi was running is running the Twitter, right? And then I see a tweet from the NAT of like, "I lived, bitch!" Like, so there was some catharsis.
That one was a collaborative effort between all of the surviving NAT members.
The survivors. How many are left now? Those are the survivors of that. Like, that was a hard year for the NAT, man.
I think everyone, like, from the standard side, Nofi is pretty much the only one since then that's still around, right?
No, a lot of people came back.
Oh, well, I guess if you want to say people come back, yeah, I guess.
Aren't they revenants though?
Kind of, maybe, sometimes. No, yes, maybe, kind of, maybe, sometimes.
So you have their
It's
ghosts.
complicated.
You have their ghosts.
Got ghosts. We got ghosts.
Nice. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
the
anyways,
situation's complicated.
I don't think like I mean looking back so back then I was just like what the fuck like and it's like a very regrettable thing to be a part of like yeah you're sidelining like these other people that probably actually would have been on your side like whatever like looking back it's like considering the team still like exploded after that it was almost inevitable like it just like I see it more like looking back as not a driver but just like a symptom of the situation that led to like what we still had which was everyone leaving right so yeah I guess it's like where do you go from here is really what the question on my mind is like what's your perspective on that.
Well, I don't know how much I can really talk about it because there's actually been like discussions around this sort of thing very recently, actually, within the internal channels that I don't really want to say too much because things are still very likely to change and discussions are still happening. But we overall, I can probably say that we still recognize that there's a lot of issues that we need to cover, including those that we tried to cover initially last year in March. But we want to try and make sure that we do this correct this time, and that includes not hiding everything until the last minute.
Yeah, for what it's worth, and something I think I've even relayed this over there. I don't see it like the issues you're trying to solve are like the community issues. Because I think like I thought the NAT like system more or less reached its like close to its peak potential even 3 years ago, right? Like it's a lot of the actual ranking mechanics are kind of a solved problem. As much as newer people getting into the scene might not like how hard it is to break through. It's like it is a pretty solved problem. It's just that I think that the amount of like the interplay with social media is still just like getting formed. Like even the rest of the world is trying to figure out how to deal with social media. And there's a bit more research, so that some of that could be used, I guess. But trying to like handle that is it is a large scope. So it's like and it's gonna require probably more dev support than you have been getting in the past decade. So
Yeah, and I think another thing is like the devs also just expect us to like get it right, lest they just like spend a bunch of like dev resources and it turns out to just not be useful either. Again, like I understand their weariness on their side as well sometimes, but there are difficulties.
Because like if the mapping community pulls us in 3 different directions, the overall community pulls the dev team in like 20 different directions. Because you also have to cater to like all the different game mode players, all of the subcultures and all the skinners, all the replayers, all the tourney people. There's just so many facets.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
one,
just like sorry. On that, I will say I think the fixation around keeping things simple is probably hurting everything. But go ahead, Mo.
yeah, I
Hmm.
was going to say, like, whatever system we try and change things or transition towards, unfortunately, it very likely will require some sort of like human workforce to like drive it. As much as we want to try and avoid, like, as much as we would like automation would be nice or whatever, there's always going to be an issue with like full automation, and to the point where we need some humans to work on it. And sometimes that work is just like soul crushingly draining on you, and that's part of the like that's one of the issues that we've tried to solve like several times in the past. And it's hard to find a solution if there is even one.
Yeah, work like that is hard to avoid burnout. And if you're not happy doing the work, then nobody's going to be happy with the outcome, I feel like, and a lot of times.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
It happens in mentorship where, a lot of this work could be automated, but, then we have to do it manually and people burn out. Just like putting shit in spreadsheets and doing random stuff.
It takes work to make it go automatically too. So it's just like, which one do you want to put in the
Yeah.
time investment in at that moment? And it can be
Yeah.
hard to be like future facing for that, especially if you don't have people with the skills that you need, or like even like the availability that you need. Because like sometimes, for NAT stuff, it's like almost everybody is always busy doing something because we're always doing so many different community things, and every member is vastly different in that regard too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just looking back at the entire situation from last year, the one lesson I'd learned is just like sometimes you have to listen to your gut feeling, because I remember the days coming up to when we wanted to like hit enter on that message and send that document out. I just had a bad feeling about it that I couldn't explain, and it turns out that yeah, you have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's done is done, and lessons were learned.
Yeah, at least you see here's the thing. At least I wasn't I saw that you and like most of you guys are actually came out all right after that because most of the blame centered around one person. Cuz here's the thing. I think it's a lot easier to forgive those that are continue to be engaged with the community when something like that happens. Uh and a lot less when people are completely detached and they come back just to do this one thing. So I'm not gonna name the names. If you guys know, you know. But I think most of the people that I know are around with that situation tend to put the blame on that person instead of even though there were five people involved. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to point any fingers in at right now, but I can understand how you would feel that way. But yeah, I like all I can say is I'll put my hand up and say I made a mistake. I'll take my part of the blame, and yeah, lessons were learned. Just know that we tried to. We the reason we did it is because there were issues that we felt at the time we needed to address. Unfortunately, that solution that we came up with wasn't the correct one.
yeah, like it's always hard because like Osu really has changed so drastically over the years. So the stuff that used to work when so things times were good and things used to work and they just don't work the way that the same solution doesn't work back then because it's like yeah in theory it could have supported this community in practice it didn't and we learned that right so it's just hard. Like nobody knows how to manage the scale of the community without introducing complexity that the devs don't seem to be inclined to help with. So
I think that we should send Nafi a mug that says "I survived, bitch," something like
I agree.
that. Yeah. But anyway,
Cool.
um, There is a couple community questions for you, Mo.
Okay.
One is, let me find it again. I lost it. Oh, one was, can you backflip now?
Can I backflip? Not last time I tried.
Okay.
When was the last time you
That's one.
tried?
Years ago.
What's
I'm not
stopping you
inclined
from
to try
trying?
now. No, yes. That's my answer.
Hey!
No, I think
And,
I'm not very athletic, so I don't think that's happening.
fair.
Fair enough.
And is it true that the NAT gives burger coupons to the BNs and other NATs?
If that's true, I'm not aware of it, and I need to get in on this.
All right. And the last question is, what's your favorite color?
Yes.
You don't know?
Well, I'd probably say blue, I want to say.
Solid
But this
choice.
is a bit of a running joke because I think I've put on my profile
That's exactly
what
right.
is my
yeah.
favorite color is, and so I actually get that quite regularly. People ask me what my favorite color is on my profile, on my
Yeah.
PM, sorry.
And what do you say? Yes.
You just say yes every
Pretty
time?
much.
Wow.
Well, I give them a different answer every time. I just say a different color every time.
That's so funny.
What?
That's hilarious.
But now the secret's out, so I don't know if I'll be able to do that again.
Yeah, this is honestly like my whole world is crumbling.
Why did you ask me that
Unbelievable.
question in the PMs?
What was that?
Did you ever ask me that question?
No, I don't think we have any DM history. Except,
Right.
like, vaguely, part of me is wondering if I had asked you for feedback on one of my, on my first map ever. I know I asked Regraz for feedback and one other person. I can't remember if that was you or not, but the DM history doesn't go back that far, so.
Right. Fair.
Yeah. Which is really sad because there was one DM history I had with Lasse that I really want to find because it was really funny. But yeah, it's gone now.
Fair
Sucks to
enough.
suck, I guess. Yeah. Do you have any future plans in OSU?
At the moment, it's just finishing up some guest difficulties and hopefully working on a map set to rank this year. Not too sure after that. Just
Take
kind
it
of
one day at a time.
pretty much that's my approach to it at the moment is like one or two maps at a time and see where I go.
Yep.
And
That
you need to
sounds
make more
like,
storyboards.
Was that sorry?
You gotta make more storyboards. Thanks.
Yes, I mean, I was talking about earlier when I said like I put a lot of effort into my maps. My goal is every single map I make, I also want to make a storyboard for it. So if you notice, every single map I have ranked has a storyboard on it, and I don't plan to change that.
Perfect.
Sick. Then you should do a full spread for every game mode while you're at it.
Oh, that one on the other hand might be a bit tricky.
You can be a new person all over again.
I tried my hand at Tycho mapping one time, and maybe I'll try do a full spread for it. But I remember doing the top difference. And yeah, this is not too bad. Like even other Tycho players saying, yeah, this is actually kind of fun. And then I try to map the lower difficulties, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Happens
That's why
to
it's
all of
not gone
us.
anywhere.
On the other hand, though, Tycho has some pretty strict guidelines for low diff mapping, so if you follow those, you're 30% of the way there.
Yeah, but then is it a good map still? Like we were talking about this earlier about like following rules. Like, yeah, you have a map, but is it any good? Does it have any personality?
kind of hard in Taiko on low diffs, honestly.
I guess. But then Catch and Mania, I have literally no idea. That's
Mania
completely
is
alien to me.
so complicated. Because not
Those guys don't
only
even.
like not only do you have Osumania's own culture, it's that you have this interacting and like overlapping culture from like a million other vertical scrolling rhythm games. So you get like a million different like mapping theories that are extremely well established with like 20-year histories or something like that, and a lot of different completely separate communities that sometimes interact with each other. So it goes crazy.
Yeah. Those guys don't even use hit sounds. The crazy guys. So
They are crazy. How can they even read it?
With their eyes.
I mean, I guess. If it's that simple, then how come I can't do it?
How much have you tried?
0.
Exactly.
You're saying I actually have to try and play the game in order to get good at it?
Yeah, just be new all over again.
OMG. Yeah. Mo, if you could make one change to anything in Osu, whether that be like ranking criteria or like whatever, what would it be?
ooh, that is a big question that I do not know how to answer.
You don't need to talk to anyone about it. Just whatever floats your boat. It just automatically enforced.
um First thing that comes to mind, being able to make changes to a ranked map. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Who knows? But that's just the first thing that came to mind that I wouldn't mind being able to do.
That's interesting.
Oh man, I would hate that because I like the idea of I never have to think about this map again. Like once I've pushed
Right?
it out,
Yeah.
I've
Like
released it.
it's terrible, but like I can't change it now.
Yeah.
Well, it's just I just always view that as just like, okay, this is where I was at that moment in time. Like, yeah, it's
Right,
like,
right,
oh,
right.
and there's some mistakes sometimes, but like whatever. That's just a funny thing to laugh about later. So
I would definitely be all for it if it was just for metadata. If you could update the metadata for ranked maps.
Hatsune Miku will no
Yeah.
longer be the most ranked artist.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, metadata should have never been tied to maps, but that requires a level of foresight that I don't think we can I don't think it's fair to expect. So
Yeah.
My approach to mapping is like very much a perfectionist. So there's several maps that I've done where I've gone back and think, crap, there's a finish hit sound there, and it shouldn't be a hit sound there. Crap, that storyboard like asset is like 5 pixels too far to the right, and I can't change it now because it's ranked.
Damn.
but maybe that's a good thing because it forces you to deal with that.
Yeah,
Because otherwise you'd probably be fixing like pixel offsets until you're like 50, man. Like
I mean, it's like these are like no, you're not wrong. Actually, I got no argument against that.
yeah, I'm like, are you sure you want that?
He's
I
wishing
mean,
for his own demise.
there's like very noticeable like areas that at least I can see. But I'm
5
probably like
pixels off.
contradicting myself from like earlier when I said, oh, look at things from a player perspective. But there's still things like, damn, I wish I didn't put that finish there or whatever.
Yeah. Oh boy. I mean, I have a couple maps that just have like gigantic errors, and I'm just like, oops. Well, I don't know. I'm not thinking about these, so it doesn't matter anymore. So that's my thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the amount of maps that are like that have missnaps, for example, out in the wild, and then like I nominated a map that had a missnap that was like actually completely playable, and then Peppy unranks it. Like what? Let's have some consistency in our enforcement here, please.
Nope, no consistency for you.
Every time we have to do an unrank, I can just feel the disappointment in Peppy whenever he has to like come into our little like thread and say, "Fine, I'll post the unranked message. It's done. There you go. Fix your shit."
I wonder if he should just like delegate that responsibility.
Well, I mean, it used to be Ephemeral that would handle those, so.
Yeah, we'll find out what's going on with Ephemeral soonish.
Mm-hmm. And like, sometimes, you know, in internal, they're like, why are we getting so many unranks lately? And it's like, we have 60% more maps than last year. I think 60% more unranks is a natural consequence. But that's my take on it.
Honestly, if it's just like a linear 1-to-1, that's actually probably a good thing, because you think with more maps, more room for error. Like you're spending less time on each map, less likely to catch individual ones, I would suspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, decreasing a very small rate is very hard. Very, very hard. So, oh boy.
I mean, like, yeah, if it's already pretty unlikely, because unranks don't happen very much. So it's kind of like, you think of like aviation. We have crashes, we have accidents, but they happen so infrequently that reducing it from that extremely infrequent to 0 is impossible.
Yeah, but like if I could just like go back and change like one tiny thing in my currently ranked maps when I need to, then that would be nice. But I can understand that it'll also introduce a whole set of problems with it. So it is what it is. Got to deal with the mistakes.
I think it's like if you had like a month after rank or something, like a very small period of time, it wouldn't be the worst thing. But
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
how
just
would
tricky
you?
with leaderboards and all of that.
Yeah, I just wonder about the leaderboards.
It took me
Yeah.
2 years to realize that 2 hit sounds in one of my maps that are supposed to be soft claps, because it's soft claps the whole time, are accidentally normal claps, and that's why they were so obnoxiously loud.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, I'm stuck with that. And all of my first ranked maps have hit sound errors, and because of that, when I'm checking a map as a BN, there was a period when I was like, I'm gonna go through and I'm always gonna specifically check the hit sounds. And then I stopped doing that until I got a warning for missing a missing hit sound section, and I was like, shoot, I
And
gotta go back to doing that.
Yeah. It happened to me where you just Nevo, when he copied the hit sounds to 2 of his maps, just like the normal and the insane GD just didn't have hit sounds for like one small section.
Yeah, that kind of
And
thing.
I'm like, the only way I would have noticed this is by individually going through each and every diff and looking specifically for the hit sounds, which arguably, you should be doing, but like realistically, who does?
My way of doing it is I'll go through and check the hit sounds the same time as I'm checking for miss snaps. So I'll literally just sit there with the music turned down and I'm staring at the timeline, making sure there's nothing on any weird 1/4s or off of the 1/4s and stuff like that. Just kind of 2 birds in 1 stone.
Yeah. It's a good approach.
I've gotten to the point where I can just like, even when I'm just like randomly playing a map, just normally, I can just hear like random missed whistles in a map. So I'll just like, sometimes when a mod is like, here, you just missed a whistle right here, even though no one else would have probably noticed that, but it is objectively not there because it's on every other white tick, for example. So I've kind of gotten okay at that, for better or worse.
I think that sounds like it's for the better if it makes it easier to spot and fix.
Yeah, but it just also means that as a player, when I'm playing like older maps where there are more mistakes like that, I can hear like, I can hear that's wrong.
What's your favorite mapping era?
Oh, that's a question. I want to say around 2014, 2015, around the time I started. Might be a bit of a controversial one because like there were issues from back then, but that's just like, as I guess it's a nostalgia factor for me why I kind of like that.
I don't think that's controversial at all. I think that's actually really popular scenario.
Fair enough.
So that's the like 20. That's like the 2014, 2015 era.
Yep, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, not controversial at all. The nostalgia baiters are always there in that era.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like make this cutoff like from 2016 and before, like about 2012 to 2016-ish, as like kind of that similar era, like the golden age, if you will. A lot of people would call it.
I think but looking before 2014, I think has too many issues for my liking. So I think just after 2012 is more my taste. I think.
Yeah. Yep. How it is.
Yeah.
But
I just have one off question here. So can you, like, in retrospect, how was your experience mapping for OWC?
It was it was an interesting experience, I want to say. I had fun. I think overall I had fun with it. I'm relatively proud of the maps I made out of it, but it does require a bit of a commitment, especially when they come back and say, "Yeah, this style isn't what we're looking for. Can you please redo the entire thing?" Which actually, because of my approach to mapping and making sure I want everything as perfect as I possibly can be, I would rather just like remap an entire thing instead of like readjusting huge portions of the map, which I did for my last tenure on the OWC map pooling.
Yeah, I remember that. Like you got feedback and you just remapped the whole thing, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah,
Oh
it was.
god.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't really. I wouldn't say I hated my time there, but I'm also not against doing it again. It's just I need to have the time, be able to commit my time to it, and the energy, because it does take a bit of time and energy to
yeah.
do so.
Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough.
I can't spit out maps like the likes of Mira and Yaspo and your standard other tournament mappers.
I don't
I cannot catch
actually
up with
think
those
that
lot.
Yaspo pumps out a ton of maps.
You don't
Is
think he
Yaspo
does,
known
though?
for is Yaspo known for pumping out maps really fast?
He just
Not
doesn't
fast,
rank
but
them.
yeah, he's not. Yeah, he doesn't rank maps. He's known for like just having quantity, right? But yeah, not necessarily speed.
Yeah, Mir definitely makes maps fast. Like what was wild to me was he has one map that is 15 minutes long. He did that in a day. Fully hit sounded. It was like a
Holy
day and a
cow.
half he did it in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I watched him do some of it and he mapped like 30 seconds in like 10 minutes or something like that. I was like, holy shit.
Still
I
go.
can't do that.
Yeah. But I
But
think a lot of it
also,
is him just doing like a formula, right? Like it's not
yeah,
not every object he's placing is necessarily like intended to have a specific like meaning or purpose.
And I mean, once you have enough experience, there's a lot of patterns that you kind of internalize in your head, and you can just place like the ones that you want to do or the style
Yeah.
that you kind of want to do without having to think about or recognize every single object as much as you might have used to needed to. And that's like a bit of muscle memory too, to just literally put them where they want to go.
That's why new mappers have to just map more.
Yeah.
yeah.
Gotta
My
build up
experience
that.
with mapping for tournaments though is that they want it for like a specific slot in the map pool, and so you have to like introduce specific kind of styles and patterns into the map. And sometimes I kind of struggle with that sometimes because I kind of usually I want to do my own thing to represent the song in my own way, but sometimes I have to like force certain patterns to conform to the slot in the pool.
If I remember correctly, you were making like a speed map. Yeah, those are people are very particular. Particularly the test players. So like the map poolers probably care less. They're just like, hey, we need these types of circles, these types of rhythms. And then the test players will be like, no, we need to not have this aim, and it needs to actually do this. So that's generally what happens with speed, unfortunately. So
You know what? That sounds horrible. I find it hard enough. I find it enough of a struggle to storyboard on a deadline for these World Cups, but they give me almost complete freedom over what I do. If I had to do it on a deadline, and do it a super specific way. I don't
Well,
have the
the thing
willpower.
is, it comes across more specific because like there's the disconnect of like what the player sees and what the mapper sees. So it's like if you understand like what they want from the beginning, you can actually like design around that, and you're not as constrained. Like that's how like I've gotten around it.
Mhm.
Because like I already knew what was expected, so I never felt constrained when making those maps. Unless they were just like, "Yo, we hate your pattern, and we're just gonna ask you to kill your pattern," which is actually what happened in that year. The same
No.
year you mapped Mo. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, the other thing is like I think that year and then the year before, I was mapping a double time slot, and
yeah,
double time maps are way more sensitive to like changes in difficulty. It's like you
yep.
change something, it's like okay, now it's just too easy, or change this and okay, now it's just too hard, and all you've done is like a tiny little change. Like you added a couple more streams here and there, but it just has a huge knock-on effect on the rest of the map with
Mappers are
like the small
not.
changes.
Yeah, mappers are not used to seeing those like thinking in that way, because I think it's like double time really reveals just how reliant everything is on like how often you do something. It's not it's like this for, the reading and the gimmick maps too. And actually just everything. It's like the more often you do like a harder pattern, the harder the map goes. It's just a lot more clear with double time.
Yeah, I think it's just like my mapping history just works better towards double time in terms of like in a tournament setting, just because the skill ceiling is just like really high, and so like my maps that I've done in the past are more suited for just double time, just because I haven't made super difficult maps. The first time I worked for OWC, I did a hidden pick for the qualifiers. And it feels like ever since I did that, they don't trust me with any other slot other than double time now.
Oh
I don't know.
no.
So,
You've been
I mean,
typecasted.
let's be honest. I think that's a good thing that you're not getting called for no mod one duty. Like, holy
I
crap!
guess.
Like, really, trust me. I think count your blessings on some of that, because yeah, it's like if you are doing the highest star rating maps or whatever in those pools, oh, you're not there. Like, you're not a quality mapper. I'm telling you. Like, it's
Right.
not impossible to make good maps at those ranges, but it's usually the more novice mappers are the ones that end up going for that slot, because they haven't gotten to the point where they, hate their maps for being so hard yet. So
Right.
That's an interesting spin on it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I haven't heard it
uh,
from that perspective before.
it's pretty common. Like the no mod
I've
one
definitely
memes.
heard no mod one hate. Yeah.
Yeah, like no mod one in particular, because it's very constraining, because you just have to make like a graveyard jump map essentially, right? And this like that's what that slot is. And the Nomad 2 is like you have to make a stream map, but you can't have fun with it. So
Yeah.
that's more suitable for mappers that are not yet at the point where they want to do interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so non-veteran mappers, but like good enough not to be total crap. It's a hard balance. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Um,
couple veteran mappers out there that like it, but very, very few.
Yeah. Even some of those, they just get bored of it after a while anyway. Like I'm thinking of Skyflame was one of them, where it's like he was making these like comfy anime jump maps, for years, and then he's just like, I'm bored, and then it's like, oh okay, finally.
there was
Yep.
one map I ranked in 2017, Zetsubo no Fuji. It's basically like a linear concept kind of map, sort of akin to what Hollow Wings did, and I thought that, in my opinion, that's like one of the best maps I did. And then a month after I ranked that, they used it in the OWC for the round of 32,
Mhm.
and that's the kind of thing I want to like give to the OWC if I was like to map for them. And I think one of the first time they took me on as a map pooler, they put me on the HD1 pool of qualifiers. That's what they expected of me.
Mhm.
Um, and it, even though it was like it did its job, it probably fell flatter than it should have been, which is why probably why I've been relegated to DT like double time slots. But that's if I wanted to come back, that's what I wanted to. That's more the kind of stuff I want to contribute next time. But we'll see if I do OWC this year.
Yeah, it's getting tricky. They're moving away from getting custom mappers, so they're
Really?
going back. So it's like the pendulum is swung the other way. Like,
Fair.
so we went from trying to perfect map pooling to let's make it fun again, and so the pendulum has swung. So yeah, we'll see.
They're gonna just pull map from the rank section probably then.
Not just ranked, loved, and graveyard. You know how it goes, like everywhere.
Gotcha.
They're just gonna pull
That's
maps from
interesting.
everywhere. But it's just like, I mean, obviously they try to make sure they don't suck too bad, but it's like it's gonna be lower than the standards that mappers set for sure.
Yeah.
As usual.
Another difficulty I found with map pool mapping as well is finding a song for it, because me personally, I can't just pick any song and map it. I need to be
Yeah.
actually like into the song before I can actually like get through it and map it, or otherwise I won't make anything I'm proud of. And when it comes to OWC, it needs like specific BPMs, and it's like, yeah, that's tricky.
Oh yeah, that's the hardest part. But it's just like once you've gotten that, usually the map, if you know what to look for, the map does make itself after that. So
Yeah,
it's hard,
but
it's tough.
my playlist of songs is like very narrow, much narrower than the average person who maps for this game. So I don't really have many songs to pull from when I need something.
Kidding. Finding a song is half the battle. Wasn't there somebody who made a video on like song choice? Did you make a video on song choice?
I made a song and video on
I
song
know
choice, yeah.
Pishy also did, but yeah, it matters a lot. That's half slash feedbacks for me on how
Your song
Always
choice,
in the
man.
song choice. I mean, literally, like song choice just makes your map. Like it took me a long time to actually like accept that. I'm like, wow, all this other shit, all this shit I'm thinking about, it's like 10% of the quality of the map. It's like the rest of the song. It's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like the song has to give you options and also spark ideas. And a lot of stuff that has like a very monotone energy level doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, matters. But anyway, we are over 2 hours, so we're gonna kind of wrap up this episode. So thanks everyone for watching, and certainly thank you, Mo, for joining us.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
If you want to know Mo's favorite color for any given day, just message him.
Yep, feel free.
Yeah. Obviously, if you guys want to join our weekly mapping zone, it's every Saturday. And let me know if you have any feedback for improving the show, anything like that. We're going to upload the VOD to YouTube later today. If you missed any of the earlier parts, you can rewatch it. And thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.
See you later.